Welcome back to the Healthy Commute. I'm Dr. Dan with Dr. Pascal. So today we have maybe a fun question, but really I think it would help people understand their overall wellness and mobility. So the simple question is that, can you get up off the floor?
It sounds funny, right? I think everybody right away goes, well, of course I can.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not just about getting off the floor. It's how easy it is for you. And the real test here that we're thinking of is, can you get off the floor without using your hands? And people might be thinking, okay, great guys, why are you guys talking about this today? Well, we know that something as simple as a test of getting up off the ground, especially without being able to use your hands, has a very strong prediction or a link with your risk of death.
Right.
Sounds funny, right?
So the test that we're talking about is a simple test where if you could get down from a standing position onto the floor without using your hands. Basically, you need full knee mobility, hip mobility, core strength, flexibility,
low back
mobility and strength to get basically on the ground without basically propping or using your hand as kind of leverage. And same thing, getting up off the ground without using your hands. So basically how they did this test is that you had a -1 for every point of contact you made. So for example, if I'm about to sit on the ground, do I then lean myself? Am I now holding my other knee as bracing? Do I push off a knee? So on and so forth. So I could get -1, 2, 3, 4 points of contact. Same thing as I'm getting up off the floor. Am I using my hand to push myself off the floor or off a knee? And again, if I don't touch anything, I get a perfect 10.
So there's 5 points for being able to sit on the floor.
Yep.
And then 5 points from getting up from the floor to standing. So you can score 5 points to get down, 5 points to get up, for a total of 10. So a perfect score is 10, is that correct?
That's exactly right.
And then so every time you use your hand, whether it's on the ground, a surface, or on your knee, it's -1 for every point of contact.
Correct.
Okay. So if I can sit all the way down without using my hands, I get 5 points. All the way up, I get 5 points. My max is 10. If I only touched once on the way down, I score a 9.
Yeah.
If I touched once on the way down, once on the way up, I score an 8. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Now, the interesting kind of fact about this test is they measured is that people that scored an 8 to 10 had a significantly lower rate of death.
Crazy.
Right? People that scored between a 3.5 to 8, their risks got up. And then those that scored a 0 to a 3.5 were likely to die within the time they were doing that experiment.
Yeah, it was 6.5 times higher.
Yeah. So all in that to say is that especially we come in contact with patients who may have different issues going on, whether it's lower back issues, hip issues, knee issues. And sometimes they talk about their mobility is restricting them to do the things that they maybe want to do.
Yeah.
But the scary part comes at the time where if they're not even able to get on the floor properly, to pick up something properly, to get themselves back up off the floor if they end up there, that's now talking about safety things and so on and so forth. But the key thing that when we saw this study was just that is the best measurement for your overall health, wellness, mobility, and functional movement.
Absolutely. Because I heard I can't remember who it was, I think it was Dr. Peter Attia, who might have been talking about it one time, and he was saying, so a lot of times you'll go for your physical, and we're going to check heart rate, and you're going to check lung function, you're going to check all these blood markers, and you could pass your physical with flying colors if everything on the inside is quote unquote working well in the bloodstream, but they pay no attention to your independence or your ability to function on the outside, right? How is the structure dictating your function? Because maybe you're functioning well on the inside, but if you have no strength, no mobility, and you're chronically living in pain, it's all fine and dandy if that stuff is good on the inside, but what is your true quality of life if you have no freedom or independence? Right. And I think it's important for people to understand why is that linked to a risk of death, and Dr. Dan touched on it briefly, but it has to do with falling. The older we get, if you fall, maybe when you see it with your kids, they fall, they can stand up, they brush it off at 100 miles an hour. You get into your 20s, you fall, takes a minute. You get into your 30s and 40s, every time you get older, every fall hurts more and more. And so someone in their 70s, 80s, 90s, if they fall, not only does it hurt them, if they can't physically get up, now they're stuck on the floor for 2 days before someone comes to attention to help them. That's where that risk of death really comes in. And that's compounded by the fact that if they fall and break something, now you're really in trouble if you can't get up to even be able to get the phone and be able to call somebody for help. And so there is a strong link between your ability to take care of yourself and sitting and getting up off the ground. And the other one too, Dr. Dan, is they used to talk about them in something called the Rancho Bernardo studies. They were looking at posture, which is probably very strongly linked. And they were talking about for every inch that the ear drifts forward of the pelvis. In other words, you kind of like lean in this forward direction. Every inch was almost like I think it was 100% increase in your risk of death. So 4 inches forward was like a 400% higher likelihood of dying for the exact same reasons. You're more likely to fall and you can't get up off the ground.
Now, why are we talking about all of this today? Now, our last podcast was about, exercise and, the type of exercise. Now, the key thing that we also want to kind of address is, you were just mentioning this quote before we started recording is, long-term thinking, has long-term results. So if we kind of reverse engineer this, so let's say for me right now, we've just done this test before, we're able to both kind of score very high to get down the floor and then back up.
I got a 12.
Nice. You cheated.
I cheated.
No, but what we also want to be conscious of is, okay, I want to be able to do this now, but I also want to be able to do this properly in 10, 20, 30 plus years from now, or at the very least score still very high. But if I want to do that in 30 years, what do I need to do today to ensure that happens?
Right.
I need to, maintain my flexibility, my strength, my core strength, my hip, knee, ankle mobility and strength. So there's a lot of things that we need to do now to ensure that could happen in a long time from now. Right?
Absolutely. And so, part of our goals, and that's it, it's what you mentioned, that mindset, I think really describes how we both think, what we believe, really a lot of the philosophy of our profession. But I think more important in our clinic, how we want to help people is exactly that, the long term. Someone that comes to see us for a quick fix, yeah, sure, we can help get you out of pain, but did we really make an impact on your long-term health? No. And I think you and I both, if we could do anything, is to help people have long-term vision, long-term thinking, small steps every single day to end up being 80, 90, and score 10.
Yeah.
Is that that's right. Kind of the best way we can describe of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess what can people do right now?
Well, number one is try the test.
Right.
Right. Because if you can't score a 10 right now,
yeah.
and maybe you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, do you think without putting effort or correcting lifestyle habits that's going to get better or worse with age? Mm-hmm. Right. And so if you can't score 10 right now, you need to start figuring out what you can do to improve that. Right. 2 is if you can score 10, then what do you keep doing to maintain that?
Right.
But then 3 is kind of like rethink your training. And like we talked about that last podcast, if you could run a 3-hour marathon, but you can't get up off the ground without using your hands, where should you be investing your time? Is it doing those long training runs all the time and pounding yourself to the ground? Mm-hmm. Or should you be looking at things like core strength, yeah. mobility, and so on and so forth? Stability. Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of the things that we try and do with patients address some of these issues, right? Yeah. Number one is, I think the foundation for us is if your spine is not in the right position, mm-hmm. in other words, if your spine structure is out of line, therefore the function doesn't work properly, you can't move, you can't bend, you don't have proper flexion and extension, mm-hmm. you're not going to be able to do this. So step 1 is to address problems at the core, the structure of the spine. Yeah. Right? Step 2 would be once you get those things moving better and you're starting to do some proper rehabilitation of your spine, is to start strengthening the core. So you want to create correction, then you want to create strengthening, yeah. and then from there, then you want to build the strength through the ranges of motion, aka mobility. So then we start challenging you in these different positions to get stronger towards your end range of motion, because most people get hurt, not like in small motions, but what we call the end range of motion. So that's kind of really, at a 37,000 foot view of how you to go about this.
Yeah, and all of this to understand maybe where your weaknesses are. So for example, if you're someone that sits at a desk all day, who is, rounded posture, kind of stronger in the front, whereas your front part of your shoulders and chest are kind of running forward and your head's forward, then you may not have that balance, that you need to probably get up. So for you, somebody like that would basically try to stand up and they would either tumble forward or tumble back because there's no balance. Right. So to understand, okay, well, if I'm going to continue to sit 8-10 hours a day, what can I do to minimize some of those things? What habits can I address now, and what stretches and exercises can I do to maintain as much balance as we possibly can, right? And that addresses a lot of the posture work that we do, a lot of the posture exercises that we teach our patients, because we need that balance to be overall healthy.
So in general, if someone wants to go back and watch like the postural videos that we've done where you work on posture correction, anything that you can do to maintain your posture in a neutral balance is going to improve your mobility and flexibility generally. So someone can go back and watch any of those videos on our YouTube page about fixing your posture, or the best exercises to bulletproof your core, right? Those are simple things that people can start with, again, in addition to this test. Now, if you've done this test and you scored poorly and you want to know what you might need to do specifically, because those are general things, they're not going to address specifics for every individual person or patient. If you have questions about it, give us a call or come into the office and let's do the test with you here, in the exam room if you're one of our existing patients, and let's find out maybe where you're deficient and some things that you can add to practice this.
So hopefully that maybe opened up a new maybe idea of what it's like to just get up on the floor and what that test actually means. But again, if you have any questions or concerns, you can give us a call here at the office, 204-470-3368. And if not, have a great rest of your healthy commute.